God bless you, everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's having a good day, spending time with the family. I want to jump right into the message. It is a little long. I'll be as quick as possible. This is something that you'll have to listen to on the way to work or when you're at the office to really hone in on what I'm saying. I label this message Lingering. To give some context to it, I was reading again on the story of Lot and everything that transpired with him and Abram. And I have been in situations that in my life that I can relate to Lot on how he acted during certain seasons in his life. So some context to this is there's two mentions in the book, in the 66 books, before some books were taken out, on the book of Jasher. The book of Jasher, if you have read it, it gives really deep insight on what happened pretty much in the book of Genesis. It gives you a better understanding why people did things, when they did things. It's a really deep dive on what happened in Genesis. So the book of Jasher is mentioned 2 times. That's what I found. There might be more. In Joshua 10:13 and in 2 Samuel 1:18, the book of Jasher is mentioned by those 2 books. Now, I'm going to read something out of the book of Jasher that's going to set the tone for the study that we went over. Now, to give you a quick overview on what's happening, Abram, in the book of Jasher, says that he was a son of a prophecy. And when he was born, there was a star in heaven that swallowed up 4 other stars. Those 4 other stars represent nations. At that time, Nimrod pretty much ruled the world. Nimrod is in the Bible. So when all the witches, the sages, the warlocks went to Nimrod and said, hey, there's a prophecy going around that there's this kid named Abram that's about to come onto the earth and he's going to destroy the 4 stars. Nimrod didn't want nothing to do with that. So Nimrod went to go look for him. He knew Abram's father, Terah. Terah's in the Bible. Terah, he was a servant of Nimrod at that time. And he went to Terah and said, hey, this is what's going on. This is what the sages are telling me. Bring me your son, because I want him dead. I'm going to kill him, or else I'm going to kill you. So Terah didn't want Abram to die, because that's his son. So he got the child of his handmaid and brought him to the king. And the king killed that baby right then and there. So Nimrod goes about his day thinking that he killed Abram. In fact, he did it. So now, fast forward to what I'm about to read now. Okay? This is the book of Jasher, chapter 12, verse 9. It says, and when Abram was come, the conjurers of the king and the sages, they saw Abram, and they cried out to the king, saying, O sovereign Lord, surely this is a man whom we know to have been the child at whose birth the great star swallowed the 4 stars, which we declared to the king now 50 years since. So you got the witches and the warlocks. You got Abram walking by in the town and they tripping out. Hey, this is the man that we prophesied about. So they ran to the king and said, hey, about 50 years ago we told you this. In fact, he is not dead. This dude just walked right by us. Okay? And behold, now his father also transgressed thy commands and mocked thee by bringing thee another child, which thou didst kill. So they're saying, hey, Abram was walking around, and don't forget that his daddy's the one that said Abram is this baby here. So don't forget his daddy too, because he lied to you. That's what they're telling the king. And when the king heard their words, he was exceedingly wroth, and he ordered Terah to be brought to him. And the king said, Hast thou heard what these conjurers have spoken? Now tell me truly, how didst thou? And if thou speak truth, thou shalt be acquitted. He's saying, hey, my guys over here are saying that you lied about Abram. Is that true or not? Tell me the truth, or I won't kill you. And seeing that the king's anger was so much kindled, Terah said to the king, My lord and my king, thou hast heard truth, and what the sages have spoken is right. And the king said, How couldst thou do this thing, to transgress my orders, and to give me a child that thou didst not beget, and to take value for him? Because again, in the book of Joshua, it says that Terah was one of his great servants. He's saying, man, you served me all these years, how can you lie to me? But that's a crazy sentence within itself, because like, you're gonna go to somebody, hey, bring me your baby so I can kill him. That's how insane Nimrod was too, thinking that nothing was wrong with it. And Terah answered the king, Because my tender feelings were excited for my son. Of course, he didn't want to kill his own son. And I took the son of my handmaid, and I brought him to the king. And the king said, Who advised thee to this? Tell me, do not hide aught from me, and thou shalt not die. He's saying, who advised you to do this? Who told you to bring a baby that was not yours to me? And Terah was greatly terrified in the king's presence, and he said to the king, It was Haran, my eldest son, who advised me to do this. And Haran was in those days that Abram was born, 2 and 32 years old. He was Abram's older brother, Haran. But Haran did not advise his father to anything. Terah threw his own son under the bus because he didn't want to die. But Haran did not advise his father to anything, for Terah said this to the king in order to deliver his own soul from the king. For he feared greatly, and the king said to Terah, Haran thy son, who advised thee to this, shall die through fire with Abram, for the sentence of death is upon him for having rebelled against the king's desire in doing this thing. So he's saying, okay, your son's about to get it then. Thank you for telling me the truth. Now go get your son. And Haran at that time, okay, this is where I want you to mentally highlight this. And Haran at that time felt inclined to follow the ways of Abram, but he kept it within himself. Abram was following God. Haran wanted to follow God, but he kept it within himself. He didn't make it publicly known. A lot of people in this state, a lot of churches are in this state. They keep it within themselves because they don't really want to go fully all the way. And Haran said in his heart, Behold now. Haran, this is his brother. He said in his heart, Behold, now the king has seized Abram on account of these things which Abram did. And it shall come to pass that if Abram prevail over the king, I will follow him. But if the king prevail, I will go after the king. You got Haran not really wanting to follow Christ all the way. And 2, he's ready to switch up. If Abram lives, I'll go with him. If Nimrod lives, I'll go with him. Ready to switch up. Many people are like this. When the Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. An undecisive man. Mentally highlight that. Indecisive man. Because that later went into Lot being undecisive. Now, to fast forward all this, Haran died in the fire. Abraham did it, or Abram did it. It says, and the Lord loved Abram, and he had compassion over him. And the Lord came down and delivered Abram from the fire and was not burned. Fast forward a little bit, and Haran died when they cast him into the fire, and he was burned to ashes, for his heart was not perfect with the Lord. His yes wasn't yes, and his no wasn't no. So, I'm going to fast forward here. The king Nimrod was tripping out. He would set servants, hey, go get Abram out, but they couldn't because the fire was consuming them. And he had to go himself. And he saw Abram walking in the fire because God saved him. So Nimrod said, Abram, come out of the fire. That was the only way, because none of Abram's servants were able to get him out because they were all being consumed. So Nimrod personally went over there to the fire and said, Abram, come out of the fire. And Abram said to the king, and then he asked him, how are you still alive? Yeah, I see your brother there burned to fried chicken, but what about you? How come you're alive? And Abram said to the king, the God of heaven and earth, in whom I trust, who has all in his power, he delivered me from the fire, which thou hast cast me in. He's giving praise to God. Now, fast forward, these people wanted to worship Abram, because obviously seeing somebody in a fire and then he walks out unscathed, no burn, they said that they bowed down to Abram, and Abram said, no, do not bow down to me. You bow down to the God of heaven, the one who made soul and spirit. Okay? And this thing seemed very wonderful in the eyes of the king and the princes, that Abram was saved from the fire and that Haran was burned. It was very wonderful that they saw Haran burn. That's how God wanted it, though. Two men thrown in the fire, one gets burned and one comes out with nothing. One's heart was not perfect towards the Lord, and one was perfect towards the Lord. God wanted the whole... It says that when they threw him into the fire, the whole town, all the kids, the children, the women, the princes, everybody was there to see it. Keep in mind, Lot, that's his dad, Haran. Lot was there too. He saw his dad burn. Imagine the trauma with that. When I started really putting these two stories together, I understood why Lot would act this way. He saw his dad burned alive. That's a lot of trauma that you, as a little boy, and then moving forward, I can see why he would act the way he was acting. Doesn't give him an excuse, but I can see why. So Nimrod gave Abram two of his head servants. One of the head servants was Ani, and the other was Eleazar. Eleazar's in the Bible. Eleazar is Abram's servant that went to go get Rachel. I believe it was Rachel. Eleazar is in the Bible. So the book of Jasher is explaining how these people came about. And all the kings, the princes, and the servants gave Abram many gifts of silver and gold and pearl. And the kings and his servants sent them away, and he went in peace. And Abram went forth from the king in peace, and many of the king's servants followed him. And about 300 men joined him. After the fire, he left. He had jewels, he had pearls, he had silver, gold, and they still gave him about 300 men. These 300 men are in the Bible. When the 4 kings went up against the 5 kings, when Lot got captured, it's in Genesis, I think like Genesis 12, I think. It says that Abram took his men. These are the men. The book of Jasher is telling you where these men came from. Okay. I say that now to get into the message. The focal point is Haran. He was undecisive. He was ready to jump ship. He didn't really want to proclaim this walk. He had it on his heart. Okay? So, In Genesis 11, 27 verses 27 through 28, it says, this is a genealogy of Terah. Terah is the dad. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran begot Lot, and Haran died before his father, Terah, in his native land. He died before his father because his father saw him burn before him. Everybody saw him. That's why it says that before his father he died in his native land. Genesis 11 verse 31, and Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth from Ur of the Chaldeans, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. I'm giving you a quick backstory. Terah took Abram, took Sarai, and took Lot. They left. Haran's dead. So notice, Lot was without a father. His dad was burned in the fire. Okay. So the trauma that, and the I can't imagine seeing all that, but that carried with him throughout his life. Okay. So in Genesis 12 verse 1, I put the King James Version here. It says, now God is speaking to Abram. He told him, now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of that country, from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will shew thee. So Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. Okay, the first thing I want to point out there, God said, get away from his family. Get away from that kindred. But God put on there, but Lot went with him. This verse doesn't say that Abraham took him. Lot went with him. He says, get away from that kindred. What kindred is, the definition is a person's family, relatives, or a group of individuals linked by blood, marriage, or shared characteristics. That's Lot right there. That's his blood. But God told him, get away from your blood. Get away from your kindred. So there's two scenarios that I thought why Abram took Lot. So Abraham felt bad. That's one scenario. That he's in the fire, he's looking at his brother, and his brother's burned to ashes. And then he's looking up at the stage over there, and he sees Lot crying his eyes out because his dad just died. And he feels bad. He feels obligated to Lot because he don't have a dad anymore. That's one. The second is, and they still have this I guess like an honor code, like the honor shame culture that Abram was abiding by in those times. That he was supposed to be the head of Lot, to honor his brother, right? But that's man's custom. That's not what God said. God didn't say get out of that country and honor and follow the honor shame code. He didn't say that. He said get out of that country and from that kindred. That's what he said. Regardless, we follow Christ. We don't follow man's routine. Abram should have never taken Lot. Lot Lot had to be saved many times. Excuse me. Lot had to be saved many times not from Abram, but Abram went to go get him, I believe, 3 times. So the other scenario was that Lot, he wanted to be an heir of Abram's promise, but it wasn't his promise, it was Abram's promise. So just like his dad Haran did in Jasher 12:19, Haran was ready to switch up, remember? If Nimrod lives, I'm going to go with him. If Abram lives, I'm going to go with him. You see that same characteristic in Lot. Okay? So Abram should have never taken Lot. The promise was not Lot's, it was Abram's. But how God works, through everything that has happened, he still turned it around for good. Now, God tested Lot twice. God tested Abram twice. We only think it was one test. When he wanted, God wanted him to sacrifice his son Isaac. That wasn't the first test. The first test was leaving Lot. Do you understand? Abraham loved his family. But at this time, Abraham loved his family more than he loved God, but he didn't even know it yet. He thought he was doing the righteous thing. But that's not what God ordered. So the first test was leaving Lot behind and trusting God that Lot is going to be okay. The second test, to get rid of the love of the family more than God, is put your son on the altar. I want to see where your love is at. That's the second test. So God was making it very clear that Lot was a tag along. Dude was tagging along. I'm going to read 3 verses. In Genesis 12:4, it says, and Lot went with him. Genesis 13:1, and Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot went with him. Genesis 13:5, Lot also went with him. God was making it very clear. Lot went with him. I didn't tell Lot to go. But Abram was caught up in thinking that he was doing the right thing, which in my heart, as a man, as a father, yes, you were doing the right thing. But that's where the trust in God, we don't understand his commands at times. He said, get away from Lot. But Lot went with him. So the first speed bump, really, that in the road of Abram is when they needed to share the land, because Abram's herdsmen started going back and forth with Lot's herdsmen. These people were getting big. So if you remember that story, Abram, because he was more mature, said, Lot, I don't want to fight with you. You're my blood. So please look at the land here. You pick which land you want. If you want to go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you want to go to the right, I'll go to the left. So now you got Lot here looking at the land, and immediately looks at Sodom and Gomorrah. In the Bible, it says that it was a very beautiful place. I believe in the Bible, it says that it looks like the garden of God. I can only imagine how beautiful it was. Lot immediately looked at the wilderness, the wilderness, and said, ain't no way I'm going there. Boom. Let me go where all the trees are at, where the nice waterfall, or the lakes. That is going to benefit me. It's going to benefit all my herd. So Abram, I'll go ahead and go over there. You go to the wilderness. And Abram gladly went into the wilderness because of the strife that could have taken place. the easy way out. That boy Lot. We're gonna start seeing the characteristics of what his dad embedded in him. Do you understand? Put it this way. When Haran, his dad, before he got thrown in the fire, said, whoever wins or whoever lives, I'm gonna go. That's the same thing that Lot did right there when he picked Sodom. He saw the easy way out, and he went that way. So in Genesis 13:14, it says, and the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are. Notice this.